Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in. For some of you, it'll be revision, and for some of you, this will be new information. So realistically, yesterday there was 3 parts to KOHR's session. The first question I asked the group, we spent about 5 to 10 minutes on this. What makes you happy? We went around the room and people said things that made them happy. We had family. We had friends. And for the people on this now, if you want to put something in the chat that makes you happy, that would be awesome. Just while I go through some of the answers that we got yesterday. We had money. We had video games. We had food. We had learning. We had, which one that I didn't expect, fast Wi-Fi. Let's see what we've got. Yes, good one there. We had golf. We had improving at something. We had boat. We had a boat. So, and this went on, and we went round the room. And ultimately, what we did was we just discussed all the things that, as Team KOHR, can make us happy. Very, very simple task. And it was really about me understanding who was sat in front of me and what makes them happy. And I think it was nice and thought-provoking for some of the students to engage in this task and really think like, okay, when am I happy? What things in my life make me happy? And we discussed a little bit about maybe attempting to try and do more of these. Once we had discussed that, once we'd finished doing a round robin around the classroom, I provided the students this image. And what we talked about was the things that made us happy on that previous diagram from going around the room, talking about the things that made us happy. What evidence is there? What studies are there? What other pieces of information, facets of information are out in the world that can maybe help us broaden our horizons of understanding what happiness, fulfillment, positivity is? And then we discussed a couple of these. So one of them was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I took the class through what Maslow's hierarchy of needs was and discussed the triangle. So this triangle, right at the very base, it highlights your basic needs, your basic physiological needs. We need to breathe. We need to have food. We need to have water, shelter, and clothing, and sleep. That's at the very core of our existence. There are basic needs. And in the class, we talked a little bit about if video games make you happy, if food makes you happy, if your phone makes you happy. All of a sudden, if you didn't have the ability to breathe, that would change very quickly. So we talked a lot about how we based our happiness through our lens of life. Because there's some people in the world that don't have food, don't have water. So those basic needs for the core students and myself and the coaches, they're met. And for some people in the world, they're not. Or if we lost the ability to have these things, then all of a sudden what would make us happy would change dramatically. Maslow stated in his research that you can only progress to the second level of the triangle if everything was in place. If all of these things are in place, then you can go to the next level. So then we talked a little bit about the next level of happiness and fulfillment as a human being, coming from safety and security. And we discussed that we're all pretty fortunate to have family that provide property for us, parents that are employed, that can pay for health insurance, and give us the level of safety and security that we need to progress to the next level. And I think sometimes, and this was brought up by a couple of students, they forget to be grateful to their parents or to their family for providing this next level of happiness through safety and security. Now, we then discussed as a human being, if you can breathe, if you have food, if you have water, if you have shelter, clothing, if you have safety and security, your parents can provide financial support, you have a property to live in, your family is there and available to you. The next level of fulfillment is love and belonging. So this really isn't just about having your family for safety and security. It's about connecting with them. It's not about having friends or acquaintances. It's about the level of connection that you form with these people. Being in a community. So at Core Golf, we're trying to form a community. At your school, you'll be part of a community. With your family, where you live, likely you'll be part of a community. So having a sense of connection gives love and belonging. And I think a lot of the students felt like, yes, all of this was in place. Yes, all of this was in place. Yes, all of this was in place for many of them, not everyone. And then the fourth part of the triangle, if you want to continue to be fulfilled and happy, the fourth part of the triangle is based around self-esteem. So we talked here about confidence, achievement, respect from others. We connected this back to school quite a bit. If the teachers respect you, if your coaches respect you, if fellow competitors at golf respect you, how all of these things can fuel your self-esteem. And we talked a little bit about just being comfortable being you. So the need to be a unique individual. So maybe people who look around at others, want what others want, maybe have some envy of others, that can affect your level of happiness, and you wouldn't be able to progress to this green level that Maslow discusses. And then finally, we talked about self-actualization. I shared with the students the stunning statistic that according to research, only 1 in 100 people become self-actualized. Only 1 in 100 people experience purpose, fulfill their calling, live life towards a deeper meaning. And I think the thing in the class that stood out was the highest answer given when I asked the students how many people become self-actualized. The highest guess given by any student was 10 out of 100. That was the highest guess. And a lot of students guessed 1 or 2, which is pretty much correct. So it was very interesting looking at the students when I asked them, hey, what makes you happy? And then we discussed what makes them happy. And then when I shared with them Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a lot of them, their feedback was they have a different perspective after looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, maybe being a little bit more grateful for health, maybe being a bit more sacrifice a little bit of the PlayStation to connect with the family a little bit more. Just understanding that often happiness is in some of the simplest, most accessible places. And this was a really nice exercise to do. We finished it off talking about self-actualization and linking that back to last week, how we discussed motivation and why. Why do you want to achieve these goals? Intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, and how self-actualization is heavily linked to intrinsic motivation. So it was really, really good. Again, like I said, to see this is what the students initially said made them happy. Computer games, family, friends, doing well in school, playing golf, going on a boat, learning, food, money, influence, power, all of those things, a wide plethora of things were discussed. But after we discussed Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think the answers probably shifted a little bit more from materialistic or extrinsic stuff to more internally motivating and more about their own personal view of themselves, love and belonging, how they fit into a community, and trying to figure out their purpose. So it was really cool. And then to finish off, I shared a TED Talk. So again, we went through the student's perspective on what makes them happy. We then went through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then finally, we looked at it from a different angle. We looked at the last six minutes of Shawn Achor's TED Talk. And he talked about things that can make you a more positive, more productive, happier human being. So we had the student's view on happiness. We then had Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then we looked and analyzed Shawn Achor's research from a fantastic book, if you haven't read it, called The Happiness Advantage. So I'll play this for you now, and then I can give a little wrap up at the end.
It's not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied to Harvard, I applied on a dare. I didn't expect to get in, and my family had no money for college. When I got a military scholarship 2 weeks later, they allowed me to go. Suddenly, something that wasn't even a possibility became a reality. When I went there, I assumed everyone else would see it as a privilege as well, that they'd be excited to be there. Even if you're in a classroom full of people smarter than you, you'd be happy just to be in that classroom, which is what I felt. But what I found there is while some people experienced that, when I graduated after my 4 years and then spent the next 8 years living in the dorms with the students, Harvard asked me to, wasn't that guy. But what happened, I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years. And what I found in my research, my teaching, is that these students, no matter how happy they were with their original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later, their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, the complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up. I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, this freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, which it does. This is Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. And when they see this, they say, Shawn, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about? Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels. When in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 75% of job successes, only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, we already know that. So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week, and we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night is eating disorders. Thursday night is illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said, that's most people's Friday nights. which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, I'd be happy to speak at your school, but just, that's not a wellness week. That's a sickness week. What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is it's scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative, neutral, or stress, which means we can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully as we're able to work harder, faster, more intelligently. What we need to be able to do is reverse this formula so we can start to see what our brains are actually capable of. Because dopamine, which floods into your system when you're positive, has 2 functions. Not only does it make you happier, it turns on all the learning centers in your brain, allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We found that there are ways you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully. We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of that, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world, not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain that your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once, allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people, when they open up their inbox, to write one positive email, praising or thanking somebody in their social support network. And by doing these activities and by training your brain, just like we train our bodies, what we found is we can reverse the formula for happiness and success. And in doing so, not only create ripples of positivity, but create a real revolution. Thank you very much.
So I felt that was a nice thing to share with the students, as well as a lot of them put academic pressures on themselves, the part of the country that we live in, very focused academically and going to the right college and trying to push on and get the right career. And it was great to have a little discussion about how maybe happiness doesn't always lie in the grade or always lie in the school you get into, because they just continually get pushed out. The goalposts keep moving. And maybe happiness not only lies in those simple things, like love and connection, and being part of a community, and trying to find your purpose or your meaning. But happiness can also be looked at, or increased positivity can also be looked at inside those simple 5 tasks. So what we did was, again, to sum up the whole session, first and foremost, we looked at the students' belief in, okay, these are the things that make us happy. After we did that, we looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which helped the students see that, hey, I based what makes me happy through my lens. that could very quickly change if I didn't have any food or if I couldn't breathe. And, you know, maybe I should look more at being part of a community or love and connection or finding deeper meaning and purpose to be happy. And then we looked at Shawn Achor's 5 tasks, and I set the students to close the session. I set the students a 1-week challenge. So any student, if you want to put in the chat one of the 5 things that he said can lead to you being more positive, more productive, happier person, because they're the things that we're going to try and achieve on a daily basis. So one of the first ones he said was random acts of kindness. We talked a little bit about how I like to pay back at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. Number 2 was meditation. Number 3 was journaling. Awesome. Got one in the chat there. Number 4, exercise. And number 5 was 3 gratitudes. And then I use my wife as an example, who is a teacher. She leaves the house at 7:30 in the morning. And I told the students that, you know, she gets up at 5 a.m., leaves the house at 7:30 in the morning, meditates every morning, journals every morning, yoga, Peloton every morning, and gratitude every morning. And that's to set her up to just deal with the day, to deal with the stresses of being a teacher and to lower her own personal anxiety. And she will openly tell anyone that this has changed her life and made her a happier person. I think the discipline to get up at 5 a.m. when you don't leave the house till 7:30 is admirable. It's not something that I do. But the final closing piece was, look, if you want to play on the PGA Tour, if you want to go to an Ivy League school and end up on Wall Street, if you want to be a surgeon, if you want to be an entrepreneur and run your own business, whatever it is that you want to do, these things are going to make you be happier, healthier, and more productive on that journey. So I asked the students for 1 week, try and do as many of these things. And the meditation can be 1 minute. Can be 1 minute just sat in the back of the car focusing on your breath. The journaling could just be 3 words that sum up the day. The exercise could be with Coach Kevin, or it could be something you do on your own. 3 gratitudes. You could write them in your phone. You could say them in your mind. You could add them to your journaling. So I challenged the students and I did something that I don't normally do. I gave them my phone number and I encouraged them to text me how their progress is going. The other thing they can also do is every student should have their portal link. Coach Brandon has distributed those. We can distribute them again. But every day or every other day, they could write down how these things are going. So this week was all about happiness. Part 1, what do the children believe makes them happy? Part 2, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how that can maybe change your perspective or your understanding of happiness, and how many people don't actually reach that pinnacle of being self-actualized. And then Shawn Achor's work, these simple 5 steps, scientifically proven to help children be, or to help humans be happier, more positive, more productive, which I think the world that we live in, the world of social media, the world of competitive sport, the world of Ivy League and reputable colleges and the battle for grades. I think these things can make a massive contribution to a child's happiness and well-being. And that's why we're encouraging them to take part in this challenge and upload how it's going. And next week, we will review this and talk a little bit about student successes. And even if one student develops only one habit, it will be worth it. So that was the session. Next week's session is basically a review. We're halfway through the winter, believe it or not. So we're going to review everything that we've done. So the students have their orange books. They'll have the opportunity to sit in class with their orange book, revise a little bit, share the key learnings that they felt they've got from the mental program so far. And then I'm going to step aside, and I'm going to let the students ask ChatGPT questions on golf's mental game and have debates with ChatGPT. So that should be an interesting session. It's not one that I've ran before, but I'm looking forward to doing that. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know.